Hey, folks, we're having a little bit of technical difficulties here. Someone else is due. I am L.A. Marzulli. I'm the producer, co-producer, director, host of 30 films, and we have 14 books out. So there's a corpus of work. This is just some of it that you can see. Here's my formal intro. Okay, so here we go. Let's get right into it. On the trail of a Nephilim. Just so you guys, I'm sure you can see this, we will be talking about these guys. This is a model, one-to-one model by the late Joe Taylor, one of the enigmatic elongated skulls from Paracas. We are one of two teams that extracted DNA, and we are still in the process of doing more DNA research. And I can tell you this, these are not human, but I digress. So this is the Gimli Patterson film. It was sent to me by a good friend. It is frame by frame, digitized. Let's start there. Okay, here we go. Frame by frame. Watch when it turns. You can see that it's a female. It's not a guy in a gorilla suit. It's a very long stride. And you got to remember when this film was created, I mean, this is like decades ago, right? It's 1966, 67. I'm like a 16-year-old kid, and I forget where it was aired. It might have been on, one of those adventure shows with Leonard Nimoy or something way back in the 60s. But I remember looking at it just absolutely transfixed by what I was seeing. And of course, the naysayers, it's a fake, blah, blah, blah. Let me see, a guy in a female gorilla suit? Now, you might be able to buy a gorilla suit without breasts, but I don't think you can buy or rent a gorilla suit with breasts. And so it kind of blows the whole thing out of the water. You'll notice here where you can see that there's a Sasquatch, very Neanderthal looking, behind the leaves. And here's part of the problem that we have as researchers. There's so much AI nonsense out there. It's getting harder to discern what's real and what's fiction, what's fabricated. But I'll walk through it. In my opinion, and I'm stuck with it, and I'm completely biased, and I totally get that. But I believe what we are looking at with these creatures, they are some sort of a hybrid entity. Their numbers have increased exponentially since the Gimli Patterson film. They're being sighted more and more. They can range between, I would say, a juvenile around 8 feet to 12 and 14 feet. And these guys are not to be messed with. And as we get into it, we'll unpack it. So how the Nephilim return after the flood, going back to the slide. If they are a Nephilim, so what are the Nephilim? And I'll explain that. Or is this some sort of a product of evolution? I don't believe in the theory of evolution. It is a theory. It's been forced down everybody's throat like it's some sort of an absolute fact. Well, what if it's not? And they've never proven it. And now that Watson and Crick has discovered the complexity of the DNA, we realize that this thing just didn't happen by chance. It didn't. There's a very complex coding system. So for all you atheists out there who hang your hat on evolution, show me. And you can't. There's nothing. You go to Piltdown Man, which was a complete hoax. You go to something like Lucy in the old divide gold millions of years ago. I mean, they just throw these numbers around. How do you know it's 1 million years old? You don't. So there's a lot of conjecture on the other side of the aisle. I'm a frank supernaturalist. I believe in the supernatural. I have encountered the supernatural numerous times, all sorts of crazy stuff, all sorts of wonderful stuff. So that's my paradigm, and I'm stuck with it. So that's what you're going to hear for the next hour. So the book Countermove is How the Nephilim Returned After the Flood. I read your new book, Countermove, and thoroughly enjoyed it. You really connected the dots with the days of Noah. You can do a deep dive by going to my site, lamarzulli.net, lamarzulli.com. Genesis 3:15 is the gateway to the biblical prophetic narrative. If we don't understand the Genesis 3:15 narrative, we are clueless. Most of the churches don't talk about this. Most of the pastors who go through seminary are never taught this. If you were going to keep something away from the people, this is the scripture that you keep away from the people. So the scene is this: Adam and Eve have just blown it. They are in some sort of eternity. They're in glorified bodies. They don't die, basically, okay? And something happens with this entity, Hasatan, Satan, the dragon, and they realize that something has drastically changed in them, and they are hiding from the Lord. How does that work? They're hiding. They're terrified. And the pre-incarnate Christ says this to the dragon: I will put enmity between you and the woman, between your offspring and hers. He will crush your head. You will strike his heel. Folks, that's the entire biblical narrative. Go down to the third one, the message. I'm declaring war between you and the woman, between your offspring and hers. He'll wound your head. You'll wound his heel. That is the gateway to the biblical narrative. If we come to an understanding of Genesis 3:15 and realize that there's mixing of the seed, then the rest of the biblical narrative opens up, and all of a sudden, everything that we see on this planet, the ancient megalithic structures that, no one knows who built them, right? Like in Sacsayhuaman and Gilgal Raphaim over in Israel, or Menga in Spain. I've been to all these places. And, the docents will say in Sacsayhuaman in Peru, the Inca were master stone builders. No, they're not. They had copper chisels, and you can't carve and cut and move andesite. Just show me. They can't. Same thing with Gilgal Raphaim, Menga, Spain, the 80,000 standing stones at Karnak, France. I've been there. America, Stonehenge in England, and the list goes on and on and on. The book of Enoch says this. It's a pseudepigraphical book, meaning that they don't know who actually wrote it. But it was hidden from the West. Remember, the West here goes into the Dark Ages for 1,000 years. Nobody's reading anything, okay? And then finally, Gutenberg's printing press happens around 1444, and things start to change. And now we move into modernity 600, 700 years later. So nobody knew about this book, and it's found in the Dead Sea Scrolls. This is what it says in the 6th chapter. And it came to pass when the children of men multiplied, that in those days were born unto them beautiful and comely, lovely daughters. And the angels, the children of heaven, saw and lusted after them, and said to one another, Come, let us choose wives, plural, and among them the children of men, and beget us children. And Semyazu, who was their leader, said to them, I fear ye will not I indeed agree to do this deed, and I alone shall have the penalty of a great sin. And they all answered and said, Let us swear an oath, and all bind ourselves by mutual imprecations, not to abandon this plan, but to do this sake. Then they all swore together, mutual imprecations. They were 200 who descended in the days of Jared on the summit of Mount Hermon. The reason why I bring this up is because this starts all the mischief. This is the reason for the flood of Noah. This is why when you go to a place like Sacsayhuaman, it's all gone. This is why when you go to Ollantaytambo in Peru, something very cataclysmic has happened. And every single culture on the planet, I'm painting with a broad brush here, knows about the flood. They all have oral traditions about the flood of Noah. This is the deal. And so Genesis 3:15, we hear about the mixing of the seed. Genesis 6, bam, the mixing of the seed happens. And what happens? The Nephilim are there. The Nephilim 101. When men began to increase in number on the earth, and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw the daughters of men. They married, and it just goes on from there. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days and also afterward, when the sons of God were to the daughters of men, and had children by them. You can scoff at that. You can say, well, that's your paradigm, that's your belief. But this explains everything. There's no other paradigm except for the ancient alien paradigm, right? That we were seeded here by extraterrestrials. But what if we're not? What if there's no life out there except this, what we have here? Just say it. So, people have different belief systems. They have different paradigms. I have my paradigm, and you're stuck with it for the next hour. But I hope not to convert you, but to persuade you at least to look at the evidence of the biblical prophetic narrative, because it calls out with great specificity, by the way, future events. There's no other book like it on the planet that calls out future events, prophecy, in other words. And that prophecy is 100% accurate. But I digress as usual. So this is the picture that I discovered on Catalina Island. And it was in the archives, hidden away. And when I say the archives, there are museum boxes. Everything is cataloged and sorted in plastic shields, just like this picture. I'm in the archives for about an hour, and I discover this, which hardly ever happens. If you go to the archives, it's all been picked through. It's a controlled narrative. Let me digress for a second. So a couple of weeks ago, right, we got the 80,000 files from the JFK assassination. So if you know someone's coming after you and wants you to release all the files, so you go look around like this and you go, Barney, we're in trouble. So what do? We take the 10,000 or 1,000 pages out of the 80,000 pages and we just go ding in the incinerator and nobody knows anything. I mean, they've got the power to do that. Do we really think that the powers that be are going to give us what really happened, in 1963 in Dallas with JFK? But once again, I digress. So look at the skeleton here. You're looking at essentially a 9-footer. That's Ralph Glidden. He was 5'8". This is circa 1919, 1921. I discovered the photograph. I published the photograph, and we had 3 investigators, independent of each other, look at the photograph here and then deconstruct it. So this one particular investigator takes the skeleton, he stands it up. He takes the man, stands it up. We know Glidden is about 5'8". So they got a number about 8'9", but we rounded it down to 8'6". So it's a really big guy. It's out on Catalina. So there is a hidden history that's been deliberately obfuscated from the peoples of the world. Once again, there is the picture. And in the museum, when my business partner, who passed away a few years ago, Richard Shaw, and I went back to the museum, that's the original picture. So what do you see there? Wow, a skeleton's been cropped out of the picture. This is a very enigmatic Chongo's elongated skull. We were the first team ever to go in, this is at the Ica Museum, and have them turn the skull over. Why? I'll show you why. Because when you look at this, when you look at the skull right here, this is the foramen magnum. The foramen magnum, where's my pen? Should be here, right there. It should be right there in the center of the skull. See that? And it's not. It's not in the center of the skull. It's pushed all the way to the rear of the skull, the occipital plate. And you can't do that. You can cradle headboard a kid till the cows come home, and you can't manipulate the foramen magnum. You can't do it. So what we're looking at is something that's genetic. And I think we've proven that with our DNA. But check this out as we actually show you what this thing looks like at the Ica Museum way down in Peru. So you can see it there, how elongated it is. And by the way, the foramen magnum was all the way to the rear. Here's another skull. It's a lithograph that was done in the 19th century. And let me just get out of here so I can use my arrow. Okay, sorry, guys. So this is a lithograph from the 19th century. And there we go. And you can see that it's a very elongated skull. And by the way, its neck is very long too. That's not normal. So you say, well, GLA, what is this? Archaeologists, when I say archaeologists, these are a little more than grave robbers back then. But they would go into these areas in Peru, and they found a mummy that was pregnant. And so these guys went in. They wanted to see what the infant looked like in the mother's womb. This is what they took out. It's called the Schutte mummy. Schutte was the German scientist that went over there. It's called the Schutte mummy. And of course, no one knows what happened to it. Gee, how convenient is that? So there is a hidden history that's been deliberately obfuscated from the peoples of the world. Notice the elongation of the skull. Notice the neck. So once again, here's the Chongo skull. Look at the position of the foramen magnum when she turns it over. Here we go. NASA. There he is. We're the first people ever to do this. All the way in the back. Oh my God, it's right in the back. See that? Oh, sorry guys, hold on. Let me run this again. NASA. There he is. I can't stop it, but it's right. Here's my arrow. Right, look at this. It's all the way in the back.
See, it's right in the back. Look at that. It's right in the back. Why pull it this way?
It's like guide on the occipital plate. So here we are, and we are now looking at where the foramen magnum, which obviously is right there, and it's directly right next to the occipital plate, which once again, a normal human being, this foramen magnum would be in here somewhere. Mondo, do you agree with that?
Yeah, that's exactly what I see. It's interesting too. In looking at another angle, are you ready, Rick, to change the angle? Got this trying to right. Just gonna it's gonna fall on this wall. I want to put my floor in all the way in the back. Look at that. So it's a spine would look like based on.
Yeah, I mean that's all wrong. And just see how straight that is and how wide it'd be.
Wow. And then so with the roll up with this goal found about right there.
Yeah, it is very, very large. It also makes us wonder about the cranial capacity. I mean, this is so large in here that would this particular entity have more brain power than a normal human being? And of course, we don't have answers to that. Wow. What is interesting is that we know that many of the Squatches have elongated skulls. I interviewed a Native American First Nation person who lived up in Alaska as a young girl, and this particular tribe calls them Kushtaka, and I love that word because it's, we've got Bigfoot and Sasquatch. Their word, their language is Kushtaka, and there was a Kushtaka in the village that was terrorizing the village. So we've got, on one hand, these stories of Kushtaka, Squatches coming in and terrifying villages. On the other hand, we've got people that are calling them benevolent and the keepers of the forest. What are they? Who are they? We'll get into that. So this is Brian Forrester. This is down in Paracas, Peru. This is the old museum before they moved it, I believe, to the newer museum, or maybe it doesn't matter, but you can see the collection of some of them are elongated, others are not. It's very macabre. And just so you know that these skulls, this is obviously as a model, like I said before, but these skulls, there are curses on them. Some of you will be scoffing. That's okay. Scoff all you want. I've experienced it. These are highly charged objects. When you go into a tomb that's been sealed, there are charged objects. They are curses on these things. How do I know that? Because when I went down there in 2014, 2013 for the first time, I came back and I was under what I would consider demonic oppression for about 3 years before I could finally shake it. What I meant by that, it was like being oppressed by an unseen force. Not every day, not 24/7, but it was there for about 3 years. I had a good friend who was a pastor. I was at a conference. I said, man, I'm having a real tough time. He laid hands on me and finally broke it. So there's Brian, and these are some of the elongated skulls that are down there. And the Chongo skull, we just showed you that. That's the one that kind of everybody looks at and knows. That's the one that's viral. We were the first team ever to take it out of the case and record it on film, as far as I know. And we were the first team, definitely, to turn it over and show you where the foramen magnum is. Once again, look at it right here. This is not Chongo's skull. It's another skull, but you can see it. The foramen magnum is pushed all the way to the rear. So, you say, well, what does this have to do with Kushtaka or Bigfoot or Sasquatch? Well, we know that Squatches have elongated skulls. So is there a connection here? Or is there some sort of genetic program that's going on? And is there some sort of genetic similarity between the two? Let's continue. So this is from Gaia. And they did these Paracas skulls, and they did a testing too. We are in the process of continuing the DNA research. I'm not at liberty to talk about that yet, but soon we will be doing a peer review paper and then a press conference. So we look at the mitochondrial, which is the information coming from the DNA, which points to the origin of these entities. And they are not They do not originate in China, Central Asia. They originate in the Middle East and the Levant. So that means that somebody came over here. That means that travel happened. And we've done carbon-14 dating on these skulls. We did one on what we call the baby skull, which is right here. This is another model of it. This turned out to be 1,935 years old right there. We call it the baby skull. We unwrapped the skull at Senior Wands Museum. We unwrapped it. We did DNA testing in 3 different labs. It came back U2E1. Why is that significant? U2E1 is Eastern Europe. That rewrites history. Oh, it's contaminated. Well, if it's contaminated, why did we get nuclear DNA? And the carbon-14 dating doesn't lie. This skull was almost 2,000 years old. What's that doing in Peru? It rewrites history. Here's the problem, folks. The academics from the scientific community don't like the fact that, whoa, history might be rewritten. In other words, their paradigm of isolationism is blown out the window. People travel. I am an ardent diffusionist. I believe that people travel. I believe that people sailed across the oceans far in advance of Columbus. So we know that Enoch, and we talked about this already. So I believe what we're looking at, which all hails back to Genesis 3:15, and I'm going someplace with this. You got to hang with me here. If you don't understand Genesis 3:15, then we don't understand that there's an outside agency that's manipulating the genome. They are manipulating the DNA. They are creating hybrid beings. That's what they're doing. They are creating hybrid entities. These hybrid entities are walking the earth. The question is the Kushtaka, is Sasquatch a hybrid entity? In my wheelhouse, the answer is absolutely. It's exactly what he is. He's a hybrid. He's a modern-day Nephilim. This is why we've never found a body. Think about that so far. Maybe in the future we will, but let's continue. This is the skull called Waki. Brian Forrester showed it to us for the first time. We went down later and got DNA samples from it. Very interesting. No nuclear DNA. Very old. Look at the orbits. Look at the size of this thing, and that gives you an idea what it looked like. There's an outside agency that is deliberately manipulating the genome. These are all in Peru. That's the enigmatic Chongo skull, which I've shown you already. This is some of this we did DNA testing on. We call this guy the pirate, but we did DNA testing on him. To the right, you see a normal human skull. That's what a normal human skull looks like. To the left is one of the elongated skulls from Paracas. You'll also notice that the orbits of the Paracas skull are about 20% larger than a normal human being. Greatly elongation here. No sagittal suture. That suture should go all the way down and splitting the center, the dead center of the skull, the top of the skull, splitting the two parietal plates. It doesn't do that. The powers that be will never tell us the truth. There is a hidden history that has been deliberately obfuscated from the peoples of the world. Why is it that the museum, when I showed you the picture of Ralph Glidden, right, and the skeleton in front of it, which is about a 9-footer, why did the museum redact the skeleton from the picture? You tell me. Oh, is it just an accident? Well, we didn't have room to put it up. I mean, why would they do that, right? It's photographic proof of a 9-footer. Perspectives. The Nephilim Among Us updated. Scott Carpenter was a friend. Scott was on my program numerous times. He was a Sasquatch hunter. Those are some of the pictures that he took. He had a very unique way of capturing these things. He would walk through the woods with a camera with the lens facing behind him, perched on his knapsack. So instead of walking through the woods like this, the camera's behind him, and things would manifest behind him. So Nephilim researcher L.A. Marzulli recently released the DVD Watchers 10. On this DVD, Marzulli had DNA tests performed on 5 elongated skulls from South America. The elongated skulls are not human in morphology. However, they yielded human mitochondrial DNA. This is amazing similar to the hair samples collected in the Sasquatch genome study. Thank you, Melba Ketchum, for her incredible work. And she's been ridiculed, and that's what they do. Ridicule, ridicule, ridicule. You're a pseudoscientist. You're a racist. You're not an archaeologist. How dare you challenge the status quo? Bully for her. Bully for Melba Ketchum for standing up against the powers that be. My hat is off to her. This is amazing, similar to the hair samples collected in the Sasquatch genome study. Non-human hairs yielded human mitochondrial DNA. The haplogroups of these 5 Nephilim skulls were also able to be determined. The haplogroups of the skulls show the ancestral origination was from the same general geographical area. And that's The Nephilim Among Us by Scott Carpenter, who passed away just a few years ago. This is from his book. And what I want to show you here is Scott let me use this, which was incredible. Again, this is he's walking through the woods, and I'm going to get out of here so I can show you this better. See this right here? You can see that there's a circle right there. See that? See the edges of his perfect circle? I'm tracing it with my arrow. Look at this right here. Something is manifested. Scott's got his arrow to it. Look at it again. Here's the perfect circle right there. There's a gateway. There's a portal that's opening. There's a being, an entity with an elongated skull. That it's very obvious. You can see it right there. There's a being with an elongated skull that's kneeling on one knee. Let me pop this open so you can see it a little better. So there, you can see it there. Elongated skull, it's on one knee. How many times have we heard this? When Sasquatches are seen, and they don't want to be seen, they're always on one knee. They're always looking small. When they stand up, what is that? 9, 10, 12 feet? We don't know. But there's a great picture, and you can see the perfect circle. And I want to thank the late Scott Carpenter for allowing me to use this. I'm going to share something with you guys. I believe he was taken out, and I've shared this before, but I'll share it with you. I believe that they killed him, that the Squatches killed him. He used to pray. He was a Christian, and he had acreage around his house, and he would go to the 4 corners of his property and pray over that. So the Squatches would follow him home. The Kushtaka would follow him home, but they would stop at the boundary because he has legal right to the land. I'm not making this up. You can think whatever you want, but that's what he told me. And Scott is a stand-up guy. He's not lying. They were not allowed to cross the lines of the property. Scott passed away, okay? I believe that they killed him. He stood up in a restaurant and basically killed over, and that was the end of it. Massive cerebral hemorrhage, never regained consciousness. That's what they can do if they're allowed to. He got into some stuff, and I'm not going to disparage him, but they were able to cross the boundary and were banging on his house at 2 o'clock in the morning. Because he called me up. He said, "LA, something's up. They crossed the boundary. They're banging on the doors, banging on the sides of the house, banging on the windows. What do I do?" So we prayed, but it didn't stop. And I know why it didn't stop. I'm not at liberty to divulge that, but I know why it didn't stop. So this phenomenon is real. It's dangerous to all get out, but I'll present the other side of the aisle with 2 friends of mine in an undisclosed location. They have contact with these guys all day long. Are there 2 races? Are there good ones and bad ones? I don't know. And you don't know either. Nobody can say conclusively what they are. I believe that they are the Nephilim, but that's I'm stuck with that, and I already said that. So here's other shots of the supernatural. Let me see. So this is something manifesting at a game trail camera. And you can see that there's a swirl of light. Notice the pointed ears. Notice the elongated eyes. And it's looking right at the camera. It knows it's just manifested, and it knows it's been seen. There's a shot of the face. You can see the eyes are kind of elongated this way. And it's 45 degrees out, and whatever this entity is, it's got an open chest. What are we looking at here? There's another shot. Very androgynous looking. Notice the pointed ears. So someone said, well, hey, this is a fake. Someone went out there with a sheet or whatever. So the guy's grandfather went out. This is what a sheet looks like. Let me go back to this. That's what it is. This thing is coming through a gateway or a portal. It looks right at the camera as it knows it's being photographed. So what we're dealing with is stuff that's just through the roof. The sightings have gone through the roof, by the way. They're everywhere. And the question is, did the Nephilim, as we know that, did the Sasquatches, did the Kushtaka build the mounds? Did they help build the mounds? Because I don't believe that Native Americans built the mounds. Why is that? I've done way too much research on it. I want to tip my hat to our good friend and associate, Fritz Zimmerman, for coming on the record and with his book that I stand on his shoulders. His book, Fallen Angels in the Ohio Valley, the Nephilim Chronicles. That book changed my life. I've been to many, many sites all throughout Ohio. And I must tell you, human beings did not do these. Did the Nephilim build them? Did the Kushtaka help? Very possible. We don't have all the information, but there's advanced geometry. There's a knowledge of an 18-and-a-half-year lunar cycle. You know, when you go to places, this is the gateway to a place called Fort Ancient, which is right here. That's what Fort Ancient looks like. And we are standing in the gateway at the spring equinox with an app on the phone which shows where the constellations above us. That's the serpent. That's Hydra. It's always the serpent. Gee, I wonder why, right? All these sites are Nephilim architecture, fallen angel technology. They're built on an 18-and-a-half-year lunar cycle. Native Americans, with all due respect to First Nation people, stated that when they came into these areas, like the Shawnee, about 500-600 years ago, all these places, all these mounds were there. Did they use them for secondary burials, interments? Probably, yes, I believe that. But they've stated on the record that we didn't do it. Chief Joseph Riverwood, he's a Tiano war chief, peace chief, has stated on the record that Native Americans did not do this. We built smaller mounds. We are coming out with a film this year, which is going to ruffle a lot of feathers. Because if you don't have an 18-and-a-half-year lunar cycle, if you don't realize that the moon is on an 18-and-a-half-year lunar cycle, and by the way, 2025 in May is the 18-and-a-half-year lunar cycle, where the moon, I'll use this as a prop, the moon comes down and sits in the gateway at the octagon now, and then goes back up. The lunar standstill is what it's called. We've got photographers that will be there. That's a shot of the lunar standstill at the octagon now in Newark, Ohio. That's Fort Ancient, 3.5 miles of continuous earthen walls. If you were to dig up all that dirt and put them in dump trucks, you'd have 200 miles of end-to-end dump trucks. We're supposed to believe that Native Americans did this with clamshell hose and digging sticks and deer antlers? I'm not buying that for a minute. Have you ever tried to move just 1 ton of soil? Just 1 ton? And 200 miles of dump trucks filled with the soil that made this ancient megalithic site, because that's what it was. Here's an example of a serpent mound. When you're down there looking at it, you don't know what you're looking at. And guess what? The serpent is in the act of what? Eating an egg, destroying that egg. It goes right back to Genesis 3:15. What's that doing in Ohio? Now the sign is when you're there, the Shawnee built this, but the Shawnee originally said, no, we didn't build any of this. It was here when we got here. So what's the truth? What's the truth? Here are the megalithic stones in Sacsayhuaman in Peru. I've been there numerous times. Nephilim architecture, fallen angel technology. It's everywhere. And the reason why I'm showing you this is because the Kushtaka, the Sasquatch, are just part of this whole plan. Why is it that they're so elusive? Because you're interdimensional. Let me tell you a quick story, because I've been cut off and I've got a few minutes, because we didn't start till like 9:15. So I've got another 15, 20 minutes, and I'll try to wrap it up as fast as I can. And thank you for hanging with me. But there's a woman that goes out in Canada. Her property backs right up against the national forest. There's a field in front of her with a bunch of low scrub brush that goes down to the field. The field is a farmer's field. It's going to be plowed. In the distance, about a mile away, there's another woman hanging her laundry on clothesline. In front of her, about 50 feet roughly, yards away, same thing. She sees a Squatch manifest behind the bush. It's on one knee looking over the bush at the woman a mile away. She's like, how did this happen? It wasn't there, and now it's there. It popped in, and then she watches it for a few minutes, and it pops out. How many times have we heard this? These are, in my opinion, interdimensional entities, which have the ability to bend space-time as we know it. They're very powerful entities. If they are Nephilim, then there's nothing good about them at all. So, again, I'm not sure what we're looking at, but it is ramping up, there's no doubt. Here's a shot you can see behind it's a great face right there. This was sent to me by a researcher up in Canada. Very Cro-Magnon looking, isn't it? And here's the close-up. And now we're going to talk about Glab. These are the two people that I know that have been out in this very remote location that have had ongoing relationships with them. So I'm here with Wayne and Kat, husband and wife. And I met both of them actually at the Hero Watchman conference a few years back. And look, I've been a student of the Bigfoot lore, the Bigfoot legends, basically for, forever. In fact, I have a copy of the Gimli Patterson film that was recorded, and the guy basically went in, and I'm sure you guys have seen this, but he digitized every single frame of that little, 30, 40 seconds, whatever. Digitize. So we get clarity that we've never had before in the Gimli Patterson film. Ron Moorhead, a friend of ours. We've interviewed Ron, and I read his books, and I've interviewed him, and he came on the record in our Watchers series and told us about his encounter with a 27-inch footprint. So that's 18 inches right there. That's between this one and this one. That's 18. So every line, and so this thing was huge. And he told us that this drive was well over 6 feet between footprints, and then they just vanished. I've talked to people. This is all a precursor to get to you guys, but I've talked to a woman that was her house borderline national. So let me fast forward so we can get these guys talking here. Okay. For most people who are into big door of her, and I know if I showed up there, I got to looking and seeing that there actually is what God had out of the woods to take orders from Yahweh, our Creator, Father God, Jesus Christ. They take orders and they will execute the orders that will take care of these things that are coming on the earth and has been on the earth. The giants, the Nephilim giants that was before and after the flood, they keep them at bay. They keep us off. A lot of times they bring you out of the woods. They tell you there's something there that's not supposed to be there, whether it's a dog man, which I've had encounters with those, and they have taken care of my problems for me in the past because that's what God had created them to be. At first, I was thinking that they was descendants of Enoch, but his book, digging and research over into the book, in that book, I got to looking and seeing that there actually is what God had called them to be over in Enoch 10. They're Barians. And there is some bad ones. There is some bad ones.
Yeah, so that was my next question. That was my next.
Those are the Nephilim. Yeah, those are the Nephilim.
Yeah, the Nephilim, they had taken them and might like to call the dog face, which is in the Indian, they call it the Gudwi, the face eater. There's your bad ones. There's another one called the Janosqua. It's more along up around in the Canadian, but I have heard some of them in North, United States itself, and even down into the Appalachian Mountains. So the bottom line is that I'm running out of time here. So what I love about this, and I only have an hour, and we've had a lot of glitches here. So I want to be respectful to the next person. But what's interesting is, were they originally the keepers of the forest? And then the enemy comes in, messes with the genome, and creates the bad ones. I don't know. I mean, when was the last time anybody had an interview with a Kushtaka? I'm sitting here with a Sasquatch, Bigfoot. Excuse me, sir, can you tell us where you come from? I mean, I'm saying that glibly, tongue in cheek, but the bottom line is, we have a picture this big of something that's like very mysterious, very bizarre. Could there be good ones? Yeah, there could be. I don't know. But there certainly are bad ones. Now, do not enter. So this is yours truly. And I've seen this before. But we are in a very desolate place up in New Hampshire, Massachusetts, and it was dead quiet. I mean, dead quiet. There should have been, birds chirping, nothing like that. You couldn't hear a peep. And there were rock walls. This is the area where these enigmatic, mysterious rock walls are, and no one knows who built them. And they just go in every which direction, no rhyme or reason. There they are. Why are they there? So we're walking up this trail. We're actually looking for an old megalithic dolmen, thousands of years old. We found it eventually. But again, it was dead silent, very eerie. And we're walking up a trail, and I go, oh my gosh, I know what this is. I know exactly what this is. So we're out here in the wilds of Massachusetts. We're surrounded by these ancient stone walls, and even the signage is telling us, not sure exactly who built these stone walls. They don't know. Many of them were here when the first colonists pushed into the area. Some of these walls go for hundreds of yards, and they're absolutely dead straight. And the stones are very, very large. Some weighing 100 pounds, but others weighing 300, 400, 500, 600 pounds. What I find interesting here, and I can't prove this, and I don't know, but having studied Bigfoot and talking to Ron Moorhead about Sasquatch and Bigfoot, which I believe is actually a Nephilim, okay? And we look here, this tree has been twisted, completely twisted, and then brought down. And this is usually a sign that they are around. And this is fairly recent. There's another one right over here. And this tree, once again, has been twisted. You can see it right here. This is really graphic. The branch has been twisted. And, I'm a 6-foot guy, and there's no way I can twist it like that. So this tree has literally been twisted. It's a question of, at one time, it was probably over the path, and someone moved it, and then the creature, perhaps, this is all conjecture, of course, came back and did that one. This looks really fresh to me, and you'll notice the way the tree has been twisted like that. So is it Sasquatch? I have no idea, but having studied a little bit about it and gone looking for them and seeing what kind of markers they make, it certainly could be. Someone sent me this recently, actually a while back, that looks like a severed hand from a Squatch. And Ron Moorhead, this is my interview with him, talking about, again, I'm going to pass on the interview, but I'll tell you what he says is he was following these footprints were 27 inches, about like this, 27 inches. And they followed them on this path. And then just like that, they disappear. How is it possible? How is that possible, you tell me, right? This is what we're looking at. They pop in, they pop out. They do stuff. Are they Nephilim? Were they somehow genetically messed with? That's conjecture, but that's what I'm holding on to with the information I have so far. So let's continue. So there's Ron. And if you haven't checked out Ron's work, it's incredible. Sierra Sounds. And he's one of the few people that actually have vocalizations and had them translated. There is a language that's there. They are very elusive. They move really quickly. You must continue. So to put a bow on this from my perspective, from my paradigm, the beasts of the earth. And this is from the book of Revelation. I looked, and there before me was a pale horse. That's right, it was named Death. And Hades was following close behind him. They were given power over a fourth of the earth to kill by sword, famine, and plague, and by the wild beasts of the earth. The word here is sterion in the Greek. It ain't hamsters and giraffes, as the late Russ Disner used to say. So what are we looking at? What are we looking at? Is there a connection with UFOs? Those of you who have studied the phenomena know that there is. Oftentimes when UFOs appear, I mean, that's an AI illustration, but the Squatches are right there. What's going on here? Why the connection? Now, are these our space brothers? This is another 3-hour conversation. We've got 10 films on the whole UFO phenomena. Shameless plug, but we do. 10 films on the UFO phenomena, lamarzulli.com. I think there is a connection. I do not believe these are our space brothers. This all goes back to the fallen angels. That's my paradigm. Folks, I'm stuck with it, and you ain't going to move me, no matter what you say. I've been doing this professionally for over 30 years, 30 films, 14 books. Now, there's a connection. You know, let me just ask you this. Is it okay to abduct a 5-year-old boy and implant them? Of course not. Nobody ever raises their hand. So why are this so-called space brothers, counts as so benevolent? Ancient astronaut theorists. What if they're not? What if they're fallen angels, which is what I think they are? Entities who are eternal beings that have a very nefarious agenda. By the way, this is the coming great deception, but I digress. I love this shot. I heard you talking about a Bigfoot conference. Thought you might find this interesting. I took these a couple of miles from my house, Southwest Oklahoma. I have extensive activity from April to December in fine prints often. Very interesting. Another shot. And we've all seen this before. By the way, Daniel, thanks so much for, just for our friendship and ongoing. So this is from Daniel right there. And he's probably already shown this, but there's the close-up on it. So going back, you can see it. It's right in the center of the film. And there it is. So, again, I don't have time. 2, 3, 4. It gives you another shot of some tracks. So, folks, it is wrapping up. And in my opinion, the conclusion, by the way, this is AI, and this is where we are. So, I found this picture in a chest in my attic. That was my grandfather on the left, and he was a prospector up in the Sierra. This is completely AI, and this is where we are. Truth is thrown to the street, and we don't know what we're looking at. However, in my opinion, it's a mixed bag, okay? We may have these creatures who were at one time the so-called guardians of the forest. Let's just go with that. However, the fallen ones come down, manipulate the genome, and now we wind up with the Nephilim. In my opinion, are these hybrids the beasts of the earth, the Therion? You get a 12-foot Squatch that can move boulders, like boulders that weigh lots and lots of tons, and pick them up like they're nothing, move cars around. We've all heard the stories. So, the evidence is out there. We won't know. But, we've got some stuff on the back burner, which I'm not at liberty to talk about. We'll see if it actually manifests and things progress with that. And we'll go from there. Thanks for having me on, folks. Really appreciate it. Again, lamarzulli.com. There are 30 films and 14 books. Do your homework. There's a lot of material out there. Thanks so much for watching.